Christmas Eve in Manhattan smelled like pine and antiseptic. Hannah More lay on the marble floor beneath a glowing tree, wrists bound with a silk scarf that used to belong to Victor. The lights blinked red and gold across her swollen belly, each pulse counting down something she could not see. Victor Langford knelt beside her, voice calm, hands steady, as if preparing a gift instead of dismantling a life. "Just breathe," he said. "This will be over soon." Hannah tried to pull her hands free, but the knot was surgical, practiced. She tasted metal and fear. The baby shifted, a weak flutter that felt like a question. Outside the windows, Fifth Avenue hummed with carols and taxis, and somewhere a church bell rang, slow and forgiving. Inside the penthouse, forgiveness had no oxygen. Victor checked his watch, then his phone. A message flashed from Madeline Cross, all exclamation points and prayer emojis. He turned the screen away from Hannah. "She's crashing," he said softly. "You're the only match." Hannah shook her head. "I'm 8 months," she whispered. "You know the risks." "I know the math," Victor replied. He lifted a small medical kit from a Mont Blanc case, the kind executives used for cufflinks, alcohol wipes, tubing, a tourniquet. He had planned this with the precision he brought to boardrooms. "I also know consent." He angled her phone toward her face. The camera icon glowed. "Say it," he said. "Say you agree." She swallowed, thinking of her license revoked, her files stamped unstable, the way Victor had told everyone she was fragile. If she refused, he would say she panicked. If she agreed, he would say she chose. Either way, the story would belong to him. Her finger brushed the emergency shortcut as he leaned in. The screen lit, then went dark under his palm. "No theatrics," he murmured, and kissed her forehead like a blessing. They moved her through the elevator, wrapped in a coat, past a doorman who looked away. In the garage, a Mercedes idled, engine warm. Hannah stared at the ceiling, counting breaths, counting seconds. The city slid by, glittering, indifferent. The clinic was quiet, white, expensive. A young nurse hesitated at the sight of the scarf marks. Victor smiled, confident, practiced. Papers appeared. A pen pressed into Hannah's fingers. The room smelled like lemon cleaner and Christmas coffee gone cold. As the needle approached, Hannah focused on the baby's rhythm and the promise she made without words. She would remember every sound, every face, every lie. Monitors beeped softly, festive music leaking from a hallway speaker, mocking the gravity inside. Hannah felt the cold creep along her arm, imagined blood leaving faster than courage returned. She pictured a nursery never finished, a name never spoken aloud, a future folded into paperwork. Victor's reflection hovered in the glass, immaculate, untouchable. He nodded to the nurse, urgency polished into kindness. Hannah fixed her gaze on the ceiling tile, crack-shaped like a river, willing herself to stay present, to witness. If she survived, she would remember this room and every lie told here. Tonight, she refused to disappear quietly, counting seconds until help arrived without witnesses present. The door opened. Footsteps crossed the threshold with authority, not haste. A voice cut the air, clear and absolute. "Stop," it said. "Who verified this patient's capacity and consent?" Victor turned, irritation flashing before control returned. "And you are?" The man stepped into the light, rank pins catching the glow. "Major General Jonathan Hale," he said. "And this ends now." 7 minutes had passed, and the balance of power shifted. Hannah More was not born fragile. She learned it, slowly, the way water teaches stone. Years before the silk scarf and the marble floor, she had stood in a hospital hallway at dawn, scrubs damp with sweat, heart steady, hands sure. She was a registered nurse then, trusted with ventilators and last breaths. Patients remembered her eyes, supervisors remembered her charts. She remembered promises made to herself about dignity. The night everything broke was ordinary. A middle-aged man coded after surgery, alarms screaming like birds. Hannah followed protocol, called for help, documented each step. The surgeon arrived late, angry, smelling of cologne and ego. When the patient died, blame needed a body. Hannah's name fit the space. An internal review whispered negligence without proof. Her license was suspended while lawyers talked. By the time truth surfaced, quietly, the damage had hardened. Depression followed, clinical and convenient. Hannah sought therapy, took medication, did what responsible adults do. Victor found her during that season, bringing soup, solutions, and a vocabulary of rescue. He spoke in sentences that ended with certainty. He offered marriage like a bridge. She crossed because standing still hurt more. Victor insisted on managing finances while she recovered. He framed it as relief. Hannah signed forms she did not read, trusting the man who kissed her scars. When she became pregnant, he suggested she rest, then resign. Just for now, he said, and moved her world into smaller rooms. Friends faded. Work calls stopped. Her days filled with appointments and apologies she did not owe. When Hannah tried to return to a clinic as a medical assistant, whispers followed. Unstable. Risk. Liability. She learned how reputations travel faster than facts. Victor repeated the words at home when she questioned him. Your file matters, he'd say. People remember. On Christmas Eve, all of that history pressed down as heavily as the straps. Hannah understood how stories are built. She knew how easy it would be to paint her as confused, hormonal, dramatic. She knew how often women like her lose twice. That knowledge was its own restraint. In the clinic room, as the needle hovered, she cataloged disadvantages like inventory, no license, no income, a diagnosis that could be weaponized, a husband fluent in paperwork, a city that keeps moving. Fear tried to bloom, but training cut it back. She slowed her breathing, counted fetal movements, fixed details into memory. The nurse's shaking hands. The clock above the door. The way Victor avoided her eyes. Hannah was not waiting to be saved. She was waiting for a crack, any crack, where truth could breathe. When the door opened and authority entered, it felt unreal, like relief imagined too early. She did not cry. She watched. Outside, carolers laughed beneath falling snow, unaware of the quiet violence upstairs. Hannah stored that contrast, joy against threat, for later. She understood timing now. Power never announces itself. It waits. The man who entered the room carried rank, yes, but also something rarer. Procedure. Rules were language Victor respected. Hannah would speak them too. She would let evidence talk, let systems grind, let patience work. If survival was a skill, she still had it. And if motherhood demanded endurance, she was already practicing, one steady breath at a time. Tonight, she promised herself silence would end and consequences would finally begin for anyone who mistook her quiet for weakness again. Victor Langford learned early that control sounded better when dressed as care. He grew up watching his father solve problems by owning them, people included. By the time Victor reached Manhattan, he spoke fluently in reassurance. Investors trusted him. Boards admired him. Hannah mistook that certainty for safety. He courted her gently after the license scandal, never asking details, never doubting her version. He brought dinner, fixed her sink, and spoke about stability like a promise. When he proposed, he framed marriage as teamwork against a cruel world. Hannah said yes because exhaustion looks like trust when you are tired. After the wedding, Victor organized their life with quiet efficiency. He merged accounts for simplicity. He suggested she step back from work until things settled. Each decision felt small, reasonable, temporary. Together, they built a routine where Victor decided and Hannah adapted. He praised her for flexibility. He called it love. Pregnancy sharpened his habits. Victor scheduled appointments, chose doctors, monitored calories. He tracked everything, claiming concern. When Hannah objected, he reminded her of liability, of stress, of what could go wrong. Fear became his favorite tool because it wore the mask of protection. Madeline Cross entered his life through charity, not romance. She was useful first, beautiful second. Victor enjoyed the efficiency of compartmentalization. Wife at home, ally in public. He convinced himself no one was harmed as long as he managed outcomes. When Madeline grew attached, he promised patience. When Hannah grew suspicious, he promised transparency. Promises cost him nothing. On Christmas Eve, Victor believed he was solving a crisis. Madeline needed blood. Hannah had blood. The equation pleased him. He ignored variables that did not serve the answer, including consent and consequence. In his mind, husbands made hard choices. Leaders absorbed blame. History favored the decisive. He rehearsed his lines in the car, shaping compassion to fit the narrative. He told himself Hannah would forgive him later, once everyone survived. If she did not, he would document concern, cite stress, present evidence. He had done it before. Systems rewarded preparation. At the clinic, Victor watched professionals defer to confidence. He felt validated as pens moved and doors opened. When the general interrupted, irritation flared, then recalculated. Authority was a game Victor understood. He smiled, adjusted posture, offered explanations. He expected the moment to bend. What Victor did not calculate was refusal. He did not recognize it when it stood upright, calm, and procedural. He had never needed to. For years, the world met him halfway. Tonight, it stopped. As Hannah lay still, Victor sensed the shift and mistook it for inconvenience. He did not yet understand that control, once exposed, collapses quickly. He would learn, but not before trying everything he knew. In Victor's mind, love justified every action, and losing control felt worse than guilt ever could. Victor believed consequences were negotiable if you spoke confidently enough. He had negotiated permits, investors, and reputations back from the edge. Every victory reinforced the lie that rules existed for other people. In his private logic, harm was temporary, while success endured. He told himself Hannah needed him. That dependence proved devotion. He told himself Madeline needed saving. That desire was destiny. Each justification stacked neatly, like files in a cabinet no one audited. He never imagined a night where doors closed instead of opened, where questions multiplied instead of dissolving. Control had always answered him. Tonight, for the first time, it waited, silent, and did not obey. That failure would reshape every future he assumed was guaranteed forever again. Madeline Cross had mastered timing before she mastered truth. In public, she arrived exactly when applause peaked, dressed in restraint, voice warm, smile calibrated. As a PR manager, she sold reassurance for a living. Causes sounded nobler when she spoke. Donors felt seen. Cameras loved her angles. Victor noticed the efficiency first, the beauty later. They met at a charity luncheon overlooking Central Park. Madeline handled a minor crisis with grace, redirecting a reporter, smoothing a sponsor, rescuing Victor from a question about ethics. He admired competence, she admired power. Neither asked what admiration cost. Madeline knew Victor was married. She also knew married men who controlled rooms rarely stayed loyal to one. He promised discretion and patience, never love. She accepted the terms because ambition trains people to settle strategically. When he spoke about Hannah, he used words like fragile and complicated. Madeline listened and believed him because it benefited her to believe. When her health scare surfaced, it was real, but not fatal. Iron deficiency, complicated by exhaustion, dramatic on paper, manageable with time. Victor exaggerated urgency, turning concern into catastrophe. Madeline did not correct him. Fear creates leverage, and leverage accelerates outcomes. She needed Victor present. She needed the gala season secured. She needed reassurance that she mattered. On Christmas Eve, Madeline waited in a private room, scrolling messages, surrounded by tasteful white walls and expensive quiet. She felt guilty in flashes, then buried the feeling under rationalizations. Hannah was strong, Victor said. Hannah understood sacrifice, Victor said. Madeline repeated those phrases until they sounded like facts. When the door opened earlier than expected, Madeline assumed success. She practiced gratitude in the mirror, soft eyes, trembling voice. Then she heard unfamiliar footsteps, measured, authoritative. The mood shifted. Staff stiffened. Questions replaced assurances. Madeline's phone buzzed with Victor's clipped updates, suddenly vague. Her stomach tightened. She realized too late that she was not the crisis, merely the excuse. The realization arrived like cold water. If this went wrong, Victor would survive. Someone else would not. She remembered her mother's advice about men who solve problems by moving people. Madeline had ignored it because movement felt like progress. Sitting with consequences required stillness she avoided. When voices rose down the hall, Madeline stood, palms flat against the wall, listening. She heard the word consent. She heard capacity. She heard stop. Each word peeled away comfort. She was not dying. She was being used to justify something unforgivable. Madeline's ambition faltered, replaced by calculation of a different kind. If investigators arrived, she would be questioned. If cameras followed, her name would be attached. Silence might protect Victor, but truth could protect her. She weighed futures quickly, professionally. By the time a nurse asked her to wait, Madeline understood the night had changed. Whatever Victor promised, whatever she believed, none of it mattered more than what was unfolding. For the first time, Madeline considered choosing herself without borrowing someone else's power. The choice frightened her because it was honest. She sat back down, hands shaking, and opened her notes app. Dates, messages, payments. She began to list what she knew. Not yet a confession, not yet a betrayal, but preparation. In PR, preparation saves careers. In life, it saves souls. Madeline inhaled, steadying her voice for questions she could not avoid. Tonight, she realized being the other woman meant becoming a witness, and witnesses eventually speak. Outside, snow fell softly, indifferent to secrets, while sirens approached, signaling that stories once controlled would soon be written by others, not Victor at last tonight. The plan did not begin on Christmas Eve. It began weeks earlier, disguised as concern. Victor noticed Madeline growing pale during meetings, pausing too often, pressing fingers to her wrist as if counting time. He suggested tests, specialists, privacy. He framed it as protection, but he listened carefully to results, calculating usefulness. When the doctor mentioned a rare blood compatibility issue, Victor stored the information like currency. Hannah's prenatal file listed the same type. He said nothing then. He waited, because waiting was his advantage. In early December, Victor increased kindness at home. He cooked dinner, bought prenatal vitamins, rubbed Hannah's feet while discussing names. He asked questions about her health with new intensity. Hannah felt uneasy but grateful, mistaking surveillance for care. Pregnancy makes women negotiate fear daily. She chose peace. The call came 2 days before Christmas. Victor staged urgency perfectly, pacing the penthouse, voice tight, eyes glassy. Madeline collapsed, he said. They can't stabilize her without blood. Your blood. Hannah's instinct was medical, immediate. She asked for labs, risks, alternatives. Victor shook his head. There's no time. He booked a clinic appointment labeled emergency consultation. He arranged transportation. He prepared documents. Each step felt official enough to quiet doubt. Hannah asked to call her obstetrician. Victor promised later. Later never arrived. On Christmas Eve, he waited until the city softened into celebration. Crowds distracted, offices closed, people assumed goodwill. He offered wine, Hannah refused, then tea she sipped, unaware of the sedative dissolving. When her limbs grew heavy, panic flickered. Victor apologized as he tied her wrists, voice steady, eyes distant. I need you to trust me. The trap worked because it borrowed the shape of marriage. Intimacy provided access. Knowledge provided leverage. Hannah fought until dizziness blurred the room, until fear narrowed into survival. Victor filmed her words, guiding them gently, capturing consent shaped by coercion. He stopped recording only when satisfied. At the clinic, the holiday staff was thin. Victor chose that deliberately. Fewer witnesses, faster compliance. He spoke softly, signed boldly, smiled reassuringly. The nurse glanced at Hannah's chart. At her belly, hesitated. Victor leaned closer. We're family, he said. Please. Hannah understood then that the emergency was manufactured. Madeline was an excuse polished into necessity. She felt anger cut through fear, sharp and clarifying. She focused on details, anchoring herself. The clock read 9:14. The nurse's badge spelled LEAH. The hallway played instrumental carols. Evidence lived in memory. Victor's confidence grew as procedures advanced. He believed he had threaded the needle between legality and intent. He believed love stories ended with forgiveness. He did not account for oversight, for systems that cross-check, for people trained to notice anomalies. He did not imagine interruption. As the needle hovered, Hannah whispered a promise to her child and to herself. She would survive long enough to speak. She would survive long enough to expose the lie built in pine scent and paperwork. The room held its breath. Outside, snow fell heavier, muffling sound. Inside, a door opened. Authority entered without apology. The trap snapped shut, not around Hannah, but around the man who built it. Christmas, Victor would learn, is when truths surface, no matter how carefully buried. The clinic corridor looked nothing like danger. It smelled of lemon polish and warm coffee, the kind meant to calm donors and wealthy patients alike. Hannah was wheeled past abstract art and soft lighting, her coat folded beneath her head like an apology. The nurse avoided her eyes. Victor walked beside the gurney, hand resting lightly on Hannah's shoulder, performing concern for anyone who might glance their way. Inside the procedure room, everything was white and hushed. Machines hummed with restrained politeness. Christmas music drifted faintly from a speaker somewhere, cheerful and misplaced. Hannah felt the chill immediately, a clinical cold that crept through bone. She tried to curl toward her belly, instinctively protecting the life inside her, but the straps stopped her. Victor signed another form, then another. His pen moved fast, confident. "We'll be quick," he said to the staff. "She's anxious." Anxious, the word landed heavier than the straps. Hannah wanted to scream, but air felt thin. She focused on breathing through her nose, slow and measured, like she taught patients once. In for 4, out for 6. Stay conscious, stay present. The nurse named Leah washed her hands too long. Her fingers trembled as she checked the IV line. Hannah caught her eye for a brief second and shook her head, just once. Leah looked away, jaw tight. Silence filled the space where courage hesitated. Victor leaned down, lowering his voice. "You're doing the right thing," he whispered. "After tonight, everything goes back to normal." He believed that. Normal meant control restored, questions buried, consequences deferred. Hannah recognized the fantasy because she once shared it. When the tourniquet tightened around her arm, panic spiked. Her heart raced, sending heat through her chest. The monitor beeped faster, betraying her fear. Victor frowned at the sound, annoyed, as if her body were misbehaving on purpose. "Relax," he said sharply. "You're fine." She wasn't fine. The baby shifted weakly, a small protest. Hannah swallowed tears, refusing to give Victor that satisfaction. She studied the ceiling, memorizing the hairline crack shaped like a crooked star. Proof she was awake, proof she was here. Leah positioned the needle, hands hovering. "Blood type confirmed," she said quietly. Victor nodded. "Proceed." Time stretched thin. Hannah felt the sharp sting, then pressure, then the unmistakable sensation of blood leaving her body. Cold followed, spreading up her arm, stealing strength. Her vision blurred at the edges. She tasted metal again. She thought of unfinished things. A crib still in boxes. A name whispered only once. A future Victor never planned to share. She promised herself she would hold on for 7 minutes, for any interruption, any mercy she had not earned but needed. Footsteps echoed in the hall, firm and unhurried. Voices followed, unfamiliar, authoritative. The door handle turned. Leah froze. Victor straightened, irritation flashing across his face. The door opened. White coats shifted. A deeper voice cut through the room, calm and commanding. "Stop the procedure immediately." Everything halted. The machine beeped once, confused. Hannah exhaled, a shaky breath she had been saving. The balance of the room changed, invisible but undeniable. In that suspended silence, Hannah felt fear loosen its grip, replaced by a fierce clarity that sharpened memory and resolve. A promise that whatever followed would be faced awake, documented, and spoken aloud, even if her voice shook while the truth finally stood before everyone who mattered and listened. And Hannah knew this moment would decide who walked out free and who did not. Major General Jonathan Hale did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The room responded to him the way machinery responds to a kill switch. Leah's hands lifted. The IV clamp clicked shut. Victor's smile froze, then reset. Hale's eyes moved from the tubing to Hannah's restraints, then to her belly, registering facts without drama. "Who authorized this procedure?" he asked. "And under what assessment of capacity? For the record, speak clearly now." Victor stepped forward, posture perfect, tone reasonable. "My wife consented," he said. "She understands the necessity." Hale did not look at him. He addressed the nurse instead. "Remove restraints, page obstetrics, and call security." Victor's breath caught, irritation leaking through polish. "This is a misunderstanding," he insisted, smiling too fast. Hannah felt the room tilt toward order. Procedure manuals suddenly mattered more than private agreements tonight. Everyone sensed consequences arriving without permission. Right now here, Hannah's wrists were freed, circulation returning with painful pins and needles. She gasped, steadying her breath as Hale moved closer, lowering his voice for her alone. "Can you tell me where you are and what day it is?" She answered clearly, anchoring herself in facts. Hale nodded once. Capacity established. Victor opened his mouth to object, then closed it, recalculating in silence. His confidence wavered as authority displaced performance. Witnesses watched closely. Nothing else mattered. Hale reviewed the chart on a tablet, brow tightening. "Emergency designation lacks verification," he said, "and sedation without obstetric clearance is prohibited." Victor protested, citing urgency, charity, good intentions. Hale raised a hand. "Intent is irrelevant." He turned to staff. "Document everything. Preserve video. No deletions." Victor's face drained of color as systems closed ranks around truth. Holiday protocols did not suspend federal oversight tonight. Phones buzzed as supervisors were notified immediately. Control evaporated fast. In the adjacent room, Madeline listened, heart pounding. When security arrived, her phone vibrated with Victor's name. She did not answer. She watched Hale speak to staff with precision, felt the ground shift beneath her ambition. The story she rehearsed no longer fit. She began typing dates and amounts, preparing a different narrative, one that might spare her future if courage held. Silence felt dangerous, but truth felt survivable. She chose preparation. Now, finally, tonight, Hannah was transferred gently to a wheelchair, monitored, protected. Hale briefed her on next steps, concise and humane. "You are safe," he said. "Your child is prioritized." Tears finally came, hot and brief. Victor was escorted aside, still arguing, still certain he could talk his way free. Hannah met his eyes once, recognizing fear behind the mask. Power had shifted, and he felt it. Witnesses stood ready to testify. Nothing could be undone. Anymore now. Security sealed the floor. Calls went out to administration, legal, obstetrics. The clinic's holiday quiet shattered into procedure. Hannah focused on the steady beep of a monitor, grounding herself. Hale remained nearby, a calm anchor. "We will take statements," he said. "Tonight matters." Hannah nodded, understanding that survival now meant memory, precision, and patience in equal measure. Evidence would protect her better than rage. She committed to clarity. Every detail would count. Starting this minute, outside, snow continued falling, indifferent to the reckoning inside. Hannah closed her eyes, breathing through another contraction of fear, then relief. 7 minutes had changed everything. She was still here. Her child was still here. The man who controlled her story no longer did. As doors closed behind Victor, Hannah opened a future defined not by silence, but by truth, consequence, and earned justice. Tonight marked the irreversible beginning of accountability for all. Present witnesses. Hannah was moved into a monitored room where lights dimmed and voices softened. Obstetrics arrived quickly, calm hands checking vitals, ultrasound gel cool against her skin. The baby's heartbeat steadied, a small victory recorded in numbers. Relief washed through her, followed by resolve. Survival was step 1. Proof was step 2. Major General Hale organized the space like a command post. He assigned roles, set timelines, and requested records before anyone could fix them. The clinic administrator arrived breathless. Holiday sweater under a lab coat, insisting on cooperation. Hale acknowledged politely and continued. Authority, Hannah realized, was quiet when it was real. A forensic nurse photographed the scarf marks and the IV site. Hannah consented carefully, asking questions, understanding the power of documentation. She spoke clearly, naming times, locations, people. She refused adjectives. Facts only. Her voice trembled once, then steadied. Every answer felt like reclaiming ground. Victor was interviewed in a separate office. Through the glass, Hannah watched him perform confusion, then concern, then offense. He requested counsel, then waived it, then demanded privacy. Each pivot was noted, each contradiction logged. The clock moved forward, indifferent to charm. Leah, the nurse, sat with a supervisor, hands wrapped around a paper cup. When she looked at Hannah later, guilt softened into resolve. She nodded once. Hannah returned it. Witnesses recognize each other without words. Madeline requested to speak with investigators. The request surprised everyone except Hale, who nodded as if expecting it. She produced messages and invoices, timelines and instructions. "Not mercy," she said, "but accuracy." The room listened differently after that. Lies collapsed when aligned with receipts. Hannah's phone was returned. The emergency shortcut log showed an interrupted attempt. Hale photographed the screen. "This matters," he said. Hannah believed him. Small details often decide large outcomes. Outside, news of delays circulated. Victor's driver waited, engine idling, unaware the night had split in two. Inside, security sealed access. No files left, no cameras erased. The holiday quiet became procedural noise, purposeful and relentless. Hannah asked for water and took it slowly, grounding herself. She requested her obstetrician be called and named a friend as contact. Independence arrived in modest forms. Choice felt revolutionary. When Hale returned, he explained next steps without drama: protective orders, hospital transfer, interviews at daylight. "This will take time," he said. "But time is on your side now." Hannah nodded, understanding patience as strategy. She closed her eyes briefly, listening to the steady monitor. In the hush, she felt anger sharpen into something useful. Not vengeance, clarity. The story would be told by records, not by Victor. That knowledge steadied her more than comfort ever could. As midnight approached, snow thickened against the windows. Christmas crossed into morning without ceremony. Hannah opened her eyes and met Hale's gaze. "I will testify," she said. He nodded once. The evidence clock kept ticking, and for the first time, it worked for her. Measuring truth, consequence, and a future no one could steal again. Doctors coordinated transport, securing charts and custody logs. Hannah signed forms with steady hands, asking for copies, timestamps, names. She requested a restraining order and received instructions. Security escorted Victor away, his protests fading down the corridor. Hale reminded staff of whistleblower protections and documentation duty. Leah exhaled, relieved. Madeline waited to be interviewed again. Hannah rested a palm on her belly, breathing evenly, feeling hope take a careful shape, determined to protect it through daylight, hearings, courtrooms, and a life rebuilt with patience and truth. That promise carried her forward beyond fear, beyond doubt, anyone who underestimated her. Hannah was transferred just before dawn, wrapped in blankets, escorted by security through a service exit. The city looked washed clean, streets quiet, Christmas debris pressed flat by snow. In the ambulance, a paramedic spoke gently while monitoring her vitals. Hannah answered clearly, alert, insisting on notes, times, names. Clarity felt like armor. At the hospital, obstetrics confirmed the baby was stable but stressed. Bed rest was ordered. Fluids flowed. A specialist explained risks without panic. Hannah listened, asked questions, and signed forms with deliberate strokes. Every decision returned a fragment of control she thought she had lost forever. Victor was not permitted near her. A temporary protective order was filed before sunrise, served electronically, enforced immediately. Hannah learned the language of safety in real time. Boundaries were not emotional requests, they were legal structures. She slept briefly, exhausted, then woke to sunlight and a lawyer introduced by Hale. The attorney was calm, precise, uninterested in drama. She outlined options: criminal charges, civil remedies, custody protections. Hannah chose patience. Evidence would lead. Speed could wait. The attorney nodded, approving restraint. Good cases were built, not rushed. News traveled fast. By noon, Victor's partners requested statements. The clinic released a bland notice about an internal review. Online, speculation bloomed. Hannah declined interviews. Silence was strategy now. Hale advised containment. Let facts surface first. Madeline gave a recorded statement mid-morning. She admitted exaggerations, produced invoices, named intermediaries. Her voice shook, but she stayed. The weight shifted again. Investigators requested banking records. Subpoenas followed. Systems moved with purpose. Leah emailed Hannah through counsel, offering testimony. She described pressure, fear, instructions that felt wrong. Hannah read the message twice, absorbing solidarity from a stranger. Courage multiplied when shared. She replied with thanks and no promises, honoring process. That afternoon, Hannah's obstetrician visited, familiar and grounding. They discussed monitoring, nutrition, rest. The doctor held Hannah's hand briefly. "You did the right thing," she said. Hannah believed it enough to breathe easier. As evening fell, Hale stopped by to brief her. Charges were likely. Custody presumptions favored safety. "This is only the first night," he said. "There will be pushback." Hannah nodded. She expected resistance. She felt ready. When darkness returned, Hannah lay awake, listening to machines hum. Fear tried to revisit, but memory pushed back. She replayed the interruption, the stop, the door opening. Power had a sound. She recognized it now. Outside, carols drifted faintly from a nearby church. Hannah placed a hand on her belly and whispered a promise of ordinary days ahead. Whatever came, she would meet it, awake, documented, supported. The first night ended not with despair, but with resolve, settling into bone, quiet and unbreakable. Sleep remained elusive, but determination sharpened. Nurses adjusted pillows, checked monitors, offered reassurance without intrusion. Hannah accepted help selectively, conserving energy for battles ahead. She drafted a list on her phone, documents to request, accounts to freeze, witnesses to protect. Each item reduced anxiety by measurable degrees. Hale's promise echoed, steady as a metronome. The attorney scheduled filings. Investigators scheduled interviews. Momentum replaced chaos. Victor attempted contact through intermediaries and failed. Messages were logged, unanswered, preserved. Hannah felt the absence, like a clean line drawn. She practiced saying no aloud, training muscles unused. Outside her window, traffic resumed, the city indifferent yet alive. She imagined pushing a stroller through daylight, unafraid. That image anchored her. Near midnight, contractions fluttered, false alarms passing with breath and focus. Hannah smiled faintly. Her body was strong, her mind was clear. Tomorrow would test both. Tonight proved she could endure, choose, and stand. Ready for consequences, justice, and motherhood. Morning brought lawyers, not flowers. Hannah woke to the quiet efficiency of consequence, moving closer. Her attorney arrived with a legal pad and coffee, outlining filings already in motion. Temporary custody protections were drafted. Financial freezes requested. Hannah listened, nodding, asking for copies. Power returned through paperwork, page by page. Victor's response came before noon. He released a statement expressing concern for Hannah's emotional well-being, citing stress and misunderstanding. The language was familiar, almost tender. Hannah felt a flash of anger, then let it pass. Words without evidence were noise now. Investigators requested a formal interview. Hannah agreed, insisting on timing after a medical check. She understood leverage. Her body mattered, and so did pacing. When the interview began, she spoke slowly, recounting events without embellishment. She corrected errors gently. She named names. Truth felt heavy but precise. Across town, Victor met with his counsel, confidence fraying. He argued charity, urgency, love. They argued statute, video, consent. The gap between belief and law widened. For the first time, Victor sensed an audience he could not persuade. Fear surfaced, sharp and unfamiliar. Madeline's second statement landed mid-afternoon, corroborating timelines and intent. Banking records matched, messages aligned. Investigators thanked her and kept working. Hannah received the update without celebration. Justice was assembling itself. Applause could wait. By evening, a judge reviewed emergency filings. The protective order extended, asset restraints approved pending review. Hannah exhaled, long and slow. Safety acquired structure. The night felt less dangerous than the one before. Victor tried again through a mutual acquaintance, suggesting mediation, privacy, forgiveness. Hannah declined through counsel. Forgiveness was not a bargaining chip. Accountability was the only currency accepted. The clinic suspended staff pending investigation. Administrators released a second statement promising transparency. Hannah noted the shift in tone. Institutions protect themselves last. Truth first. When oversight stands watch. Late that night, Hale visited briefly. He explained the next phases. The pushback to expect, the patience required. "You're doing this right," he said. Hannah thanked him and returned to rest, conserving strength. Alone, she reflected on how narratives flip. Yesterday, Victor curated stories. Today, records spoke louder. Tomorrow, outcomes would follow. She placed a hand on her belly, grounding herself in the future rather than the past. Sleep came in fragments, but it came. Dreams were ordinary, walking, sunlight, quiet. When she woke, she felt steadier, less afraid of what waited beyond the door. At dawn, notifications arrived. Victor's firm placed him on leave. A partner requested an internal review. The circle tightened. Consequences gained faces. Hannah smiled once, small and private. Not from triumph, but from recognition. The system she feared now worked. She prepared for the long road ahead with calm resolve, knowing momentum mattered. The story had turned, not by revenge, but by procedure, witnesses, and time aligning. Victor's shadow shrank as daylight expanded, and Hannah stepped forward, ready to finish what truth had started. The investigation accelerated the way storms do after pressure shifts. Hannah felt it in the rhythm of her days, now structured by calls, updates, and carefully timed rest. Her attorney coordinated interviews, reminding her when to speak and when silence protected more. Hannah followed guidance precisely, learning that discipline was its own form of strength. Financial records arrived first. Statements showed transfers Victor never mentioned, routed through consulting fees and charitable reimbursements. Dates matched messages Madeline provided. Patterns emerged, neat and damning. Hannah studied the summaries without satisfaction. Numbers did not hurt like words, but they carried weight no apology could lift. Victor responded by escalating. His counsel filed motions, questioning jurisdiction, procedure, intent. They requested psychological evaluations, citing Hannah's past diagnosis. The tactic was expected. Hannah prepared with documentation, letters from providers, compliance records. Her history became evidence of responsibility, not weakness. Leah's sworn affidavit followed. She described pressure from administrators, Victor's urgency, the visible restraints. Her statement was careful, factual, brave. Hannah read it twice, gratitude warming her chest. The case no longer rested on one voice. It never should have. Media interest sharpened. Reporters called the attorney, hungry for comment. A narrative began to circulate about abuse hidden behind philanthropy. Hannah declined to participate. She understood timing. Truth unfolds best when uninterrupted. Victor's firm announced an internal investigation, distancing itself with practiced language. Colleagues unfollowed him quietly. Invitations stopped. The social machinery that once amplified him recalibrated toward safety. Hannah watched from a distance, aware that isolation punishes those accustomed to applause. Madeline requested immunity discussions through counsel. Prosecutors listened, weighed cooperation. Hannah was informed without involvement. She felt neither loyalty nor hatred. Outcomes would balance themselves. Her task was simpler: protect her child and remain consistent. At the hospital, doctors adjusted Hannah's care plan, monitoring stress and blood pressure. She complied, grateful for routine. Ordinary instructions grounded her more than dramatic updates. Eat, rest, breathe. The future depended on boring consistency. A judge scheduled a preliminary hearing. Dates were set, calendars filled. Hannah marked each commitment, arranging transportation, support, childcare contingencies, preparation, reduced fear. Unknowns shrank when named. Victor attempted one final maneuver, releasing a statement about reconciliation and privacy. It backfired. Investigators added it to the record. Manipulation, once invisible, now glowed under scrutiny. Hale checked in by message, concise as ever. Stay steady. You're doing well. Hannah smiled, appreciating encouragement without sentimentality. At night, she practiced telling the story aloud, measured and calm. She corrected herself when emotion crept in, returning to sequence and fact. Truth did not need decoration, it needed space. As days passed, the walls closed in around Victor, built from documents, witnesses, and his own words. Hannah felt no urge to celebrate. She felt alignment. The world, briefly skewed, was correcting. On the eve of the hearing, Hannah packed a small bag, laying out clothes with care. She chose comfort over symbolism. Strength, she learned, did not require performance. Before sleeping, she placed both hands on her belly, grounding herself in what mattered most. Tomorrow would test resolve. Tonight confirmed it. The machinery of consequence was engaged, and it moved forward without her pushing, guided by evidence, patience, and a quiet refusal to step back into silence ever again. The hearing opened with winter light slanting through tall windows, exposing dust and nerves alike. Hannah sat beside her attorney, posture steady, hands folded, breathing measured. Across the aisle, Victor avoided her gaze, conferring with counsel, confidence thinned to a brittle edge. The clerk called the case. Silence settled, expectant. Procedures came first. Jurisdiction affirmed. Motions denied. The judge's questions were plain, unsentimental. Hannah answered when asked, voice even, eyes forward. She corrected a date, clarified a time, declined speculation. Precision landed harder than emotion. The room noticed. Victor's counsel argued misunderstanding, urgency, marital privilege. The judge asked about restraints, about sedation, about documentation. Answers tangled. Exhibits followed. Logs, timestamps, video fragments, medical protocols. Each piece clicked into place with mechanical certainty. The gallery leaned forward, sensing gravity. Madeline testified next, composed, careful. She described pressure, exaggeration, silence, purchased with reassurance. She admitted benefit and fear. Cross-examination tested her, but records held. Truth remained upright. Hannah watched without judgment. This was not about redemption. It was about sequence. Leah's affidavit was entered. The judge paused to read, then looked up, expression unchanged. This concerns me, she said simply. Concern carried weight. A gavel did not need to fall to signal direction. Outside the courthouse, reporters gathered, microphones ready. Inside, the judge issued interim orders, continued protection, asset restraints, no contact. Victor's shoulders slumped. His counsel whispered urgently. The balance tipped again, visibly. During a brief recess, Hannah drank water and closed her eyes. She felt the baby move, strong, insistent. Relief warmed her chest. She did not smile. She remained present. When proceedings resumed, the judge addressed the record. Consent requires capacity, she said. Capacity requires freedom. The words echoed. Victor stared at the table. The gallery exhaled. By afternoon, the hearing concluded. Charges would proceed. Dates were set. Hannah stood slowly, supported by resolve more than strength. As she exited, cameras flashed. She did not comment. Her attorney shielded her path. Silence, again, was strategy. News broke within hours. Headlines sharpened. Philanthropy reframed. Partners distanced themselves publicly. Donations paused. The story escaped private rooms and entered daylight, where spin weakens. Victor released another statement, shorter now, cautious, lawyered. It landed flat. Receipts outpaced rhetoric. Social proof shifted. Invitations vanished. That evening, Hannah returned to the hospital. Doctors checked vitals, reassured, smiled. She slept briefly, then woke to messages of support from people she barely knew. Courage, it seemed, traveled. She reviewed notes with her attorney, planning next steps, conserving energy. The public turn was complete. The case belonged to the system now, not to persuasion. Before sleeping, Hannah wrote a single line in her notebook. Stay exact, stay kind, stay standing. Tomorrow would ask more. Tonight confirmed she could give it without surrendering herself. Later, as night settled, Hannah reread transcripts, marking margins with questions and checklists. She planned childcare contingencies, transportation, medical visits, and witness coordination. Practicality steadied her nerves. She called her father, kept the conversation light, and listened more than she spoke. He said he was proud. The words surprised her, then filled a quiet space she did not know was empty. Before bed, she set an alarm for hydration, placed documents in order, and practiced slow breathing. Outside, sirens faded. Inside, resolve remained. The public now knew a fragment of truth. The full account would arrive methodically. Hannah slept, not peacefully, but purposefully, prepared to continue, to endure scrutiny, to answer questions, and to protect her child with patience, clarity, and unwavering calm. Morning would demand strength, evidence, and restraint, and she welcomed the challenge without fear today. Victor believed Hannah had nothing left. That belief guided his next move, and it was wrong. While investigators traced accounts, Hannah's attorney uncovered a modest family trust established by her mother years earlier, untouched and separate. Victor never knew because he never asked. He assumed dependence meant emptiness. The trust was not vast, but it was clean, documented, and protected. The discovery changed posture, not purpose. Hannah did not celebrate. She authorized funds for counsel, security, and medical needs, then locked the rest. Independence reduced pressure immediately. Victor's leverage thinned. His counsel adjusted tone, requesting delays, hinting at settlement. Hannah declined. Time favored preparation. Victor responded with aggression. He filed for emergency custody, citing Hannah's past diagnosis and current stress. The filing landed hard, timed for maximum disruption. Hannah felt the blow, steadying herself with breath and routine. She documented the attempt and followed medical advice precisely, converting accusation into compliance. The court appointed a guardian ad litem. Interviews followed. Hannah answered plainly, inviting records, welcoming observation. The guardian noted structure, support, consistency. Victor, meanwhile, grew erratic, emails sharper, arguments louder. The contrast mattered. Madeline's cooperation expanded. She provided calendars, contracts, and a recorded call where Victor rehearsed language about consent. Investigators verified metadata. Another door closed. Victor's confidence fractured into visible impatience. At home, Hannah reorganized life quietly. She arranged childcare contingencies, transportation, and postpartum plans. She chose calm colors, simple meals, early nights. Stability was strategy. Every choice built a record of care. Hale checked in briefly, advising restraint. "Let the facts work," he said. Hannah listened. She focused on what she could control. Health, honesty, preparation. Fear still visited, but it no longer stayed. The custody hearing arrived with less spectacle than expected. Arguments were narrower now. The judge asked about safety plans and support networks. Hannah presented documents. Victor spoke of love and misunderstanding. The judge asked for evidence. Silence answered. Orders followed, supervised contact only, pending further review. Hannah felt relief without triumph. Protection mattered more than victory. She left the courthouse steady, supported, intact. That night, Victor sent a message through counsel proposing a private agreement. Hannah declined again. She would not trade safety for quiet. Consequences required daylight. As weeks passed, momentum built. Subpoenas multiplied. Partners withdrew. Victor's accounts tightened. The misjudgment became obvious to everyone watching. He had underestimated the woman he tried to erase. Hannah placed a hand on her belly and felt strength answer back. The future no longer depended on his permission. It depended on endurance, truth, and time, and she had learned to wield all three. Behind the scenes, Victor's miscalculation echoed in emails and meetings he no longer controlled. Advisors urged caution, then distance, then silence. Former allies requested indemnification. Calendar holds vanished. Donations paused. Hannah watched none of it directly, choosing instead to attend prenatal classes, meet with a social worker, and prepare a birth plan grounded in safety. She learned how systems protect those who persist. She practiced testimony with her attorney, refining timelines until memory felt orderly. When anxiety rose, she walked hospital corridors, counting steps, letting motion settle her thoughts. She reread affidavits, flagged inconsistencies, and trusted the process she once feared. Strength, she realized, was cumulative. Each small decision compounded into credibility. Each quiet refusal narrowed Victor's options. By choosing steadiness over spectacle, Hannah changed the tempo of the case, forcing truth to advance at its own relentless pace. Patience became her shield, clarity her compass, and documentation the bridge toward lasting protection for motherhood. The next hearing would decide custody, and Victor was running out of moves. The next revelation did not arrive with drama, it arrived with spreadsheets. Investigators mapped payments, Victor labeled as consulting fees, tracing them through shell vendors and charitable reimbursements. Patterns emerged, dull and devastating. The clinic was not an exception. It was a node. Hannah listened as her attorney explained, recognizing the shape of a system that normalized shortcuts and silenced objections. Emails surfaced showing Victor coordinating schedules, outcomes, and language. Words like expedite and discretion appeared often. Nothing explicit enough to excuse itself, nothing innocent enough to survive scrutiny. Hannah felt a strange calm reading them. The truth no longer surprised her. It confirmed what her body had known. Madeline's cooperation clarified the pipeline. Donations flowed in one direction, favors flowed back. Priority access, altered designations, soft pressure on staff. Victor had learned how to move money until ethics blurred. The clinic complied because compliance paid. Hannah understood now that her suffering was not personal, it was procedural. The district attorney expanded the scope. Additional witnesses were identified. Subpoenas multiplied. The clinic's parent company announced an external audit, language careful and late. Hannah noted the timing without comment. Institutions move when compelled. Victor reacted with disbelief, then denial. He insisted the payments were standard. His counsel argued industry norms. Investigators asked about consent again. The question anchored every discussion. Norms did not excuse coercion. Hannah's case remained the axis. At a status conference, the judge addressed the expansion plainly. "This court will examine the entire scheme," she said. Victor's counsel requested continuances. Granted, narrowly. Time still favored evidence. Hannah adjusted her routine to conserve energy. She attended appointments, answered questions, rested when advised. She avoided reading comment sections and focused on preparation. Strength came from repetition. Eat, walk, document, sleep. A former clinic administrator came forward, seeking protection. He described pressure to deliver outcomes for donors. His testimony aligned with records. Another door closed. Hannah felt the case solidify, brick by brick. Victor's firm announced his termination. The statement emphasized values and compliance. Hannah read it once and closed the file. Public consequences mattered less than legal ones. Still, the shift felt definitive. Custody evaluators updated reports. Hannah's consistency weighed heavily. Victor's volatility did not. Recommendations favored continued supervision. Hannah accepted the news quietly, grateful. In a private moment, she allowed herself to imagine life beyond hearings. A stroller. Sunlight. Work that mattered. The thought steadied her. The pipeline that once trapped her now trapped the man who built it. As filings continued, Hale reminded her that complex cases test patience. "Let them untangle it," he said. Hannah agreed. She had learned to wait. Late one evening, her attorney called with confirmation. Additional charges were being considered. Conspiracy, fraud, coercion. The words felt abstract, heavy with consequence. Hannah closed her eyes and breathed. Justice was not loud. It was thorough. She wrote one line in her notebook: "Systems fall when witnesses speak." She underlined it once. Outside, the city pulsed, indifferent. Inside, Hannah prepared for the next hearing, confident that the hidden pipeline was now exposed, documented, and closing fast around the man who believed he could move people without being seen. He was seen now, and there was no rerouting the truth anymore. Preparation became Hannah's quiet weapon as the final custody hearing approached. She planned days like checklists, waking early, eating on schedule, walking hospital corridors, and resting when advised. Every routine built credibility, every calm answer added weight to her record. Her attorney refined exhibits, rehearsed questions, and prepared rebuttals for predictable attacks. Nothing was rushed, nothing left to chance, nothing performed for sympathy. Consistency, not drama, would decide this room. Hannah trusted that truth advanced fastest when carried patiently. She focused on breathing, posture, and listening. Silence still served her. Morning light steadied her nerves. She felt ready. Now, finally, Victor arrived late, tension etched into his movements and voice. He looked smaller in the courtroom, stripped of authority and audience. His counsel argued supervision burdensome and unnecessary. The judge asked for evidence. Records followed. Patterns of coercion, instability, and disregard filled the screen. Witnesses testified calmly. Victor interrupted, corrected, objected. Each interruption hurt him. The guardian summarized findings without flourish. Supervision protected the child, she said. The judge nodded. Questions turned to compliance and history. Victor stumbled over timelines. Hannah answered clearly. Silence settled. Decision approached. The room waited. Breaths slowed. Pens paused. Eyes fixed forward. Then clarity arrived. The order was issued with restraint and precision. Supervised contact would continue. No unscheduled access. Safety plans required. Compliance monitored. Hannah felt relief settle like a steady hand. It was not victory, but protection. Victor exhaled sharply, frustration bare. The judge warned consequences for violations. Dates set for review. Hannah thanked the court briefly. She did not look back. Outside, cameras waited. Hannah declined comment. Her attorney spoke plainly. Process continues. Hannah entered a car, heart steady. Snow fell lightly. Winter felt kinder. She rested a hand on her belly, protected now. Today mattered. Tomorrow would too. She breathed deeply. Consequences accelerated after the ruling. Victor missed meetings, deadlines, and calls. Partners withdrew formally. Accounts tightened further. Investigators finalized charges. Hannah focused on health. Doctors scheduled monitoring. She attended classes, planned care, and prepared her home. Support grew quietly. Friends delivered meals. Neighbors offered rides. Routine replaced chaos. Victor attempted messaging again. Counsel logged it. Another boundary held. Hannah felt strength in refusal. Power no longer required noise. Time worked. Evidence settled. Outcomes aligned. She slept better. Morning walks continued. Winter thawed slowly. Hope followed. Not loud, but durable. Earned. She trusted the pace. It felt right. At last. Enough. Birth came early on a quiet night. Labor unfolded, steady and supported. Hannah focused on breath and rhythm. Doctors spoke calmly. The baby arrived strong. Cry filled the room. Tears followed. Hannah held her child, grounded and awake. Joy was real and earned. Paperwork followed. Protections reaffirmed. Names recorded. Victor was notified through counsel. No visit permitted. Hannah rested, exhausted and peaceful. Family arrived quietly. Support surrounded her. She whispered promises to her child. Safety first. Truth always. Morning sunlight felt new. Life restarted, not as before, but better. Honest. She smiled softly. Ready now. Together. Protected, seen, free. Home. Months later, sentencing arrived without spectacle. Victor faced consequences, documented and proportionate. The court emphasized deterrence and harm. Victims mattered. Hannah listened from home, holding her child. Relief mixed with closure. No cheers. Just alignment. She closed a chapter. Life simplified. Work resumed gradually. Purpose returned. Hannah chose service over revenge. She began training to support others. Quiet strength guided her days. The past loosened. Trust rebuilt carefully. Love found room. Not dramatic, but steady. She looked forward. Her child slept peacefully. Safety held. Justice finished its work. Balance restored. She breathed. Life continued. At last. Enough. Forever changed. Better. Spring arrived without permission, and Hannah welcomed it cautiously. Healing, she learned, was not an event, but a practice repeated daily. With the case advancing toward final resolution, she rebuilt a life designed for safety and dignity. Mornings began with feeding schedules, short walks, and lists taped to the fridge. Ordinary rituals anchored her. Stability was no longer a luxury, it was a requirement she honored. Support arrived in practical forms. A neighbor watched the baby during appointments. A friend assembled furniture without asking questions. Hannah accepted help without apology, understanding interdependence as strength. She documented everything still. Habit now ingrained, but fear no longer drove the pen. Purpose did. Her attorney shifted focus to closure. Civil remedies progressed alongside criminal proceedings. Depositions concluded, motions narrowed, dates set. The machinery slowed, then steadied, predictable at last. Hannah prepared statements with care, refining language until it reflected truth without bitterness. Precision protected peace. Victor attempted one last gambit through intermediaries, proposing a settlement conditioned on silence. Hannah declined. Silence had cost too much already. She authorized counsel to proceed publicly, calmly, and completely. Accountability required daylight. Work returned in measured steps. Hannah joined a hospital program supporting patients navigating consent and capacity. Training refreshed old skills, confidence returning with repetition. Colleagues treated her with respect earned through clarity. She felt useful again, present, valued. Madeline relocated quietly, cooperating fully. The distance suited everyone. Hannah wished her safety, nothing more. Closure did not require reconciliation. In evenings, Hannah read, cooked simple meals, and watched her child discover the world. Laughter softened, edges fear once sharpened. She slept more. Dreams shifted toward future scenes rather than replays. Progress felt real. Hale visited once, brief and kind. He congratulated her on persistence and reminded her that systems improve when citizens insist on procedure. Hannah thanked him and let the chapter close. Gratitude did not require permanence. As sentencing approached, Hannah prepared emotionally. She wrote impact statements, revised them, then simplified. Facts mattered, harm mattered, healing mattered. She practiced aloud, steady and composed. No theatrics, just truth. On the morning of the hearing, she dressed comfortably, chose supportive shoes, and left early. The courtroom felt familiar now. Victor appeared diminished, quieter, proceedings moved efficiently. Findings were affirmed. The judge spoke of deterrence, responsibility, and harm. Sentences followed proportionately. Hannah felt release without elation. Justice had a weight that settled rather than soared. She exited into sunlight and breathed deeply. The day continued. That afternoon, she returned home, fed the baby, and rested. Life did not pause for verdicts. It moved forward, asking care and attention. Hannah gave both willingly. Evening brought a message from a colleague inviting her to dinner. Low stakes, friendly, she accepted. Community, she realized, was rebuilt one honest invitation at a time. She smiled, closed her notebook, and stepped into a future shaped by choice, care, and courage earned. Later, Hannah planned a small celebration, not of victory, but continuity. She invited neighbors, colleagues, and the nurse who testified, keeping it simple and warm. Food was homemade, conversation gentle, boundaries respected. Laughter returned without guilt. When someone asked about the future, Hannah answered honestly. Stability first, then service, then love, if it arrived naturally. No rushing, no secrets. As guests left, she held her child near the window, watching streetlights blink on. Safety felt tangible. The past receded. She locked the door, set alarms, and rested. Tomorrow promised work, care, and patience. She welcomed all three. Confidence grew quietly, sustained by routine, allies, and earned trust, while hope settled in, durable and calm, ready for years ahead, without fear returning again. The final phase arrived not with chaos, but with inevitability. By the time the courtroom filled for sentencing and final determinations, the outcome felt written by months of evidence rather than the mood of the day. Hannah sat quietly in the second row, her child asleep in a carrier beside her, guarded by a friend. She had chosen to attend, not to witness punishment, but to close a chapter completely. Victor stood when instructed, posture stiff, eyes hollow. The man who once curated rooms now occupied a narrow space defined by rules he could not bend. His counsel spoke briefly, focusing on character references and intentions. The judge listened without interruption, then turned to the record. Facts outweighed sentiment. Patterns outweighed promises. When Hannah was invited to speak, she rose slowly and faced forward. Her statement was measured and short. She described harm plainly, the danger created, the trust broken. She spoke of consent and capacity, of systems abused, of fear turned into leverage. She did not mention love. She did not raise her voice. The courtroom held still. Her words did not ask for sympathy. They asked for accountability. Victor declined to speak. Silence followed him now, heavy and unhelpful. The judge addressed the court, outlining findings and consequences. Sentences were imposed proportionately, grounded in statute and deterrence. Conditions were specified. Timelines established. Each word landed with quiet finality. Hannah felt release without triumph. Justice did not erase the past, it contained it. She returned to her seat and exhaled, a long breath she had been holding for months. Around her, murmurs rose, then faded. The proceeding concluded. Outside, cameras waited. Hannah passed without comment, shielded by counsel and choice. She stepped into daylight and felt lighter. The world continued, indifferent and alive. She welcomed that normalcy. In the weeks that followed, paperwork concluded and appeals were noted, then narrowed. Hannah focused on life. She returned to work part-time, supporting patients, navigating consent and care. Purpose steadied her days. Colleagues respected boundaries. Trust rebuilt gradually. At home, routines deepened. Feeding schedules, walks, bedtime stories. The small architecture of safety grew strong. Hannah learned joy could be quiet and durable. She no longer scanned rooms for threat. She noticed light, laughter, rest. One evening, a colleague invited her to a small gathering. Conversation flowed easily, no one asked for details. Hannah appreciated restraint. Later, she accepted a dinner invitation, then another. Connection returned organically. Months passed. Victor's name appeared occasionally in notices and filings, then less. Distance worked, its quiet magic. Hannah no longer measured time by hearings, but by milestones. First smiles, first steps, first nights of uninterrupted sleep. When asked how she endured, Hannah answered simply, she told the truth. She prepared, she accepted help, she refused silence. The answer felt complete. On a clear afternoon, Hannah walked through a park with her child, sunlight filtering through leaves. She paused, breathed, and felt present. The reckoning was finished. What remained was life, unremarkable and precious. She carried forward lessons without bitterness. Power must be checked. Consent must be protected. Systems respond when witnesses persist. Hannah taught these truths quietly, by example. As evening fell, she returned home, locked the door, and rested. The future no longer frightened her, it invited her. She accepted, with patience, clarity, and a steady heart ready to choose well again. The invitation arrived quietly, embossed and understated, requesting Hannah's presence at a winter charity gala in Midtown Manhattan. The organization focused on patient advocacy and ethical care, rebuilt after recent scandals. Hannah considered declining, then accepted. Closure sometimes required standing in rooms once denied and choosing to stay calm. She arrived early, dressed simply, carrying herself without armor. The ballroom glowed with warm light, tables set with restraint rather than excess. Conversations hummed softly, no cameras crowded her. This event was not spectacle, it was correction. Hannah recognized familiar faces, clinicians, administrators, donors who now spoke carefully about transparency. She listened more than she spoke. When thanked for her courage, she acknowledged the sentiment and redirected attention to systems that needed guarding. The night was not about her pain, it was about prevention. During dinner, the host invited her to the stage briefly, without flourish. Hannah stood, heart steady, and spoke plainly. She described consent as a process, not a signature. She spoke of capacity, of listening, of the cost of shortcuts. She did not name Victor. She did not recount details. The room leaned in anyway. Truth, she learned, commanded attention when uncluttered. Applause followed, respectful and brief. Hannah returned to her seat, relieved. She had said what mattered without reopening wounds. The chapter closed further. Later, a colleague introduced her to Daniel, a physician specializing in ethics and patient safety. Conversation flowed easily, unforced. He asked thoughtful questions and listened to answers. No rescue language, no assumptions. Just curiosity and respect. Hannah appreciated the simplicity. They spoke of work, of rebuilding trust, of small wins that mattered. Daniel mentioned volunteering weekends and his fondness for early morning walks. Hannah smiled, recognizing steadiness when she felt it. They exchanged numbers without ceremony. As the evening progressed, Hannah stepped outside onto a terrace overlooking the city. Cold air cleared her thoughts. Lights stretched endlessly, indifferent yet beautiful. She felt gratitude without debt. The gala had not demanded anything from her except presence. She gave it willingly. Inside, music softened, conversations thinned. Hannah said goodbyes and left early, mindful of routines. On the ride home, she reflected on how far she had traveled without leaving herself behind. Days later, she met Daniel for coffee, then a walk. Connection unfolded slowly. Boundaries were discussed openly. Trust grew with consistency. Hannah felt no rush. She enjoyed the pace. At home, her child laughed easily now, secure and curious. Hannah balanced work and care, energy renewed. Support remained present but unobtrusive. Life felt full without noise. The gala receded into memory as a marker, not a peak. It signaled completion rather than beginning. Hannah carried forward lessons, relationships, and a sense of agency restored. When asked later why she attended, Hannah answered simply, "To stand where fear once lived and feel none. To speak truth without shaking, to close a circle with dignity." As winter deepened, Hannah looked forward. The city continued its rhythm. She walked beneath lights, hand warm in another's, child bundled close. The past no longer dictated movement. The future invited choice. She accepted with quiet confidence, grounded in what she had earned, safety, voice, and the freedom to remain present wherever she stood. Justice did not end with sentencing. It continued quietly, methodically, in the weeks that followed, as consequences settled into everyday reality. Victor's appeals narrowed and then stalled. Conditions were enforced. Restrictions held. The system did not hurry, but it did not forget. Hannah observed from a distance, choosing peace over proximity. Closure, she learned, was not watching punishment, but living freely. Financial restitution followed schedules and oversight. Funds were redirected to support victims and compliance programs. Hannah declined personal compensation beyond necessities already ordered. She wanted distance, not enrichment. Her attorney respected the choice, documenting it carefully. The gesture mattered. It reinforced credibility. It marked an ending without hooks. The clinic's audit concluded with reforms announced publicly. Training expanded, oversight tightened, whistleblower protections strengthened. Hannah attended one meeting by invitation, offered feedback, then stepped back. Change required participation, not ownership. She had given enough. Victor's circle shrank. Former allies testified when required, then moved on. His name appeared less often, then rarely. Consequence worked as erosion does, patient and complete. Hannah felt no satisfaction in that knowledge, only relief. At home, life grew fuller. Her child learned words and laughter came easily. Routines deepened, work steadied. Hannah mentored trainees, emphasizing consent as dialogue, not paperwork. Her experience informed practice without defining her identity. She was more than what happened. Daniel became part of the rhythm gradually. He respected schedules and boundaries, showed up consistently, and listened without fixing. Trust grew because it was allowed to. Hannah appreciated the absence of urgency. Love, she realized, felt safest when it did not rush. One afternoon, they walked along the river, sunlight breaking through clouds. Conversation turned to futures, gently, without pressure. Hannah spoke of stability first, partnership second. Daniel agreed without hesitation. Alignment felt quiet and sure. Community recognized Hannah differently now, not as a headline, but as a neighbor, colleague, mother. Invitations returned without expectations. She accepted selectively. Choice was the privilege she guarded most. Months passed. A review board cited the case as precedent for stronger protections. Hannah read the summary and closed the document. The debt was paid, the lesson recorded. She moved on. On a crisp evening, Daniel cooked dinner while Hannah played on the floor with her child. Laughter filled the room. The scene felt ordinary and precious. Hannah realized this was the reward she wanted all along. Safety, warmth, presence. Later, Daniel spoke simply, without spectacle, expressing commitment grounded in action. No grand declarations, just consistency promised and shown. Hannah accepted with clarity, knowing partnership was built, not declared. They planned carefully, prioritizing stability for the child. As the year turned, Hannah reflected on distance traveled. Fear no longer guided decisions. Truth had replaced it. Justice had done its work. The past loosened its grip. She wrote one final note in her notebook. Debt settled. Chapter closed. Then she put the notebook away. Life continued, unremarkable and rich. The story did not end with punishment, but with continuity restored. Hannah stood in that continuity, grounded, supported, and free. The scales balanced. The account closed. She breathed easily, knowing nothing more was owed, and everything ahead belonged to her, chosen carefully, lived fully, and protected with quiet strength. 1 year later, Christmas returned to Manhattan with quieter lights and gentler expectations. Hannah walked through the park with her child bundled against her chest, breath forming small clouds. She felt no need to revisit the past. Memory no longer pulled her backward. It simply informed her steps. The apartment was modest and warm. A tree stood near the window, decorated with handmade ornaments and one silver bell. Friends arrived carrying food, laughter, and ordinary stories. No one asked about courtrooms. No one whispered. Safety had become normal, and normal felt like a gift. Hannah cooked while Daniel set the table. Their partnership had grown through routines, not promises. He woke for feedings, attended appointments, listened when days felt heavy, and celebrated when they felt light. Trust arrived through repetition. Love followed without pressure. After dinner, Daniel knelt, not with spectacle, but with intention. He spoke of choosing Hannah daily, of choosing patience, honesty, and shared responsibility. He asked for marriage with steadiness rather than surprise. Hannah said yes without hesitation. The room cheered softly, respecting the moment. Joy felt grounded, earned, real. Later, Hannah held her child as snow fell outside. She reflected on how survival had transformed into authorship. She no longer reacted to danger. She designed her days. Work fulfilled her, home restored her, love supported her. Balance existed because she protected it. The following spring, Hannah accepted a leadership role in patient advocacy, shaping policies she once needed. She taught consent as conversation, safety as structure, courage as persistence. Her story informed practice, but did not define her. She chose what to share and when. Victor's name faded into records and footnotes. Consequence had done its work. Hannah felt no triumph in that erasure, only closure. The future belonged to those who tended it. On a quiet evening, Hannah wrote in a new notebook, plans instead of evidence, travel ideas, education goals, family traditions. She closed the book and placed it on a shelf, smiling. As the year ended, Hannah stood by the window with Daniel, watching city lights. She felt whole. Justice had balanced the scales, but life had rewarded her with something better. Choice, safety, love. She rested her head against his shoulder, child asleep nearby. The story concluded not with punishment, but with continuity. Hannah lived forward, confident and calm, knowing she had survived, rebuilt, and chosen joy without fear. That was the ending, she claimed, and it was enough. Her journey reminded others that endings are choices shaped by courage and consistency. Hannah did not become fearless. She became prepared. She trusted systems, demanded standards, and protected boundaries without apology. In doing so, she reclaimed authorship of her life. The world did not change overnight, but her place within it did. She moved through days unburdened by secrecy, guided by clarity, surrounded by people who showed up. Marriage was not a rescue, but a partnership built on visible actions and shared responsibility. Motherhood was not weakness, but strength practiced daily. Hannah understood now that justice is not revenge, and healing is not forgetting. It is remembering with control. With winter passing into light, she welcomed what came next, confident that whatever challenges appeared, she would meet them awake, supported, and unafraid to speak. The future felt open, honest, and finally hers to choose. She embraced uncertainty as possibility, teaching her child resilience, modeling integrity at work, and cultivating friendships rooted in trust, laughter, and mutual respect, believing that steady love and honest effort would continue shaping a meaningful, protected life for years ahead together always. So, the story has come to an end. And if you're still here with us at this moment, I want to pause for a second and speak to you directly. Because if you stayed until now, it means something in this journey touched your heart in a quiet but real way. What this story reminds us is simple, yet powerful. We cannot control what others do to us, but we can always choose how we respond. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Hannah did not heal by pretending the pain never happened. She healed by facing the truth, setting boundaries, and choosing dignity over silence. That is stoicism in real life, not coldness, but calm strength. Another Stoic idea says, the obstacle is the way. What tried to destroy her became the path that rebuilt her life. And that lesson belongs to all of us. Pain does not mean the end. Sometimes it is the beginning of clarity. If this story made you reflect on your own life, your own boundaries, or your own quiet strength, then please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us continue telling stories that heal, awaken, and remind us that dignity, truth, and courage are always worth choosing.